It is finally a glorious day at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Practice 2 about to get underway. We are about to see cars on track at the racing capital of the world. And to steal a phrase from somewhere else, for race fans, the happiest place on earth. Drivers about to get back in their cars. Scott McLaughlin, local hero, Connor Daly, and of course a man that everybody's eyes will be on over the next 2 weeks, Mr. Alex Palou, the championship leader, 4 out of the first 5 races won. Can he take his first oval win? Can he take his first Indianapolis 500? And what about this guy, Carl Larson? What a story once again in 2025. Well, we are about to get back on track here in Indianapolis. Welcome back to the Motor Speedway. I'm Will Buxton, Townsend Bell, James Hinchcliffe. Guys, it is great to be able to say we are about to see cars on track.
I mean, the weather has cooperated today in a great way. The sun is out, and the conditions are probably much closer to what I would expect them to be on race day. Ideal conditions right now for testing your car. I have to take a look at the windsock behind us. 0 wind speed right now, so a perfect testing environment for doing things like back-to-backing different front wings. See if that does anything to affect the baseline of these car setups. What would you be working on in conditions like this?
Well, it's like you said, the conditions is key because the sun is out, so the track temps are going to go up. That's normally what we see here on race day. It's not what we saw yesterday, but you never know. So what's so important about this practice week is assessing everything in all these different conditions. Ideally, you want to have a little bit of everything at some point during this week so you can know what an extra 10 degrees of track temperature does, what an extra 5 miles an hour of wind does. It's experience for the drivers and experience for the engineers.
And Will, the biggest variable here at Indy, wind. We'll be talking about that a lot this weekend during qualifying. Wind has a massive effect on the balance of cars when they're going this fast.
I like that approach from Christian Lundgaard, guys. It speaks to a very smart racer. As he said, someone who's not going to push too hard too soon, just take it as it comes. When we look back at the times yesterday, no surprise perhaps to see drivers who have won the Indianapolis 500 all occupying the top 15 spots. Will Power first, Newgarden second, Dixon fourth, Catherine Evers sixth, Rossi seventh, Ericsson ninth, Hunter Ray 14th. Takuma Sato down in 31st place, but he had a more difficult day with RLL, having had that car rebuilt after his crash in the open test. But the thing that really spoke to me yesterday, Townsend, Hinch and I went around a little bit before we went home last night, and we were speaking to a number of the drivers. It was the positivity across almost everybody that we spoke to, regardless of where they finished day one, in terms of what they'd learned and what they could put into effect for day 2. There was no one who was overly negative. Even Ilott, you know, and the guys down at Prema, they all saw the positives.
Wait until Saturday. It's coming. All those names you just rattled off, the Indy 500 winners that factored into the top 10 yesterday, those are the names we're going to be talking about on Saturday in terms of having the advantage with the conditions that are coming. Yesterday, ideal situation, effectively 0 wind. Right now, track temp just 104 degrees, very low wind as well, maybe 5 miles an hour. This place is never easy, but the conditions right now, absolutely ideal for having consistency corner to corner. So as we get closer to qualifying, as the cars start to take downforce off, and as we raise the horsepower, about 70 horsepower for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, that is going to start to expose the weaknesses in the setup of these cars. So yeah, hope springs eternal on the first day of practice, but just wait. Now let's see what it yields. Typically the extra power in qualifying equates to about, I'd say, 6 to 7 miles an hour, James, something in that window. So if we take his average speed on what would be lap 1 of a qual sim right here, what does Kirkwood deliver? That's a 217. That's way south of what I would have expected if it's a qual sim.
But you got to remember, qual sim on a dirty racetrack, it's been raining, you're not going to go out fully trimmed or even, you know, trimmed compared to what you're running yesterday. You're going to start a bit fat. This is to get some balance, get some get some read on the car. To be honest, though, T-Bell, he's doing too little. I'm not sure this is a full qual sim.
Well, let's see. That might have been the equivalent of a warm-up lap, that 217, because his average, like in turn 4, he's not dropping below 219. So this should be well above 220 average as Kirkwood comes across the line. Indeed, 222.8. So call it 7 miles an hour. That would be a high 229, something like that in qualifying trim. That seems about on target. And we're watching the use of the hybrid right now, Will, as you pointed it out. You can see it charging and deploying, but I wonder if he's pulling the paddles.
I gotta be honest with you, man. If he's pulling a 229 in qualifying, he's going to be very disappointed. We were seeing 232s in the open test when we got the extra boost. I think it's closer to a 10-mile-an-hour gain this year with what we're seeing guys from kind of race trim into qualifying trim. Sometimes even more condition dependent. So
but
right now,
he might not be that trimmed out too. So that second lap is faster. So this implies a little more down first with the consistent lap times. That last lap at 2:23.
He's also catching cars in front. You know, this isn't a clean, honest sim, but it's about going through the motions. As you know, T-Bell, and as we've talked to a lot of these drivers, there's so much going on in the cockpit on a qualifying run now. Between your shift strategy, adjusting engine maps, hybrid usage, weight jacker, the fast jacker technology that we'll talk about a lot over qualifying weekend. The drivers have so much to think about, so much to do inside the cockpit. One of the best parts about doing these quali sims, even on a day like Wednesday where you're not trimmed out all the way, you don't have all the horsepower, it's getting reps for the drivers. It's getting them comfortable going through the motions of everything that you have to do and have to remember when you're doing 10, 12 miles an hour more and the car's on the absolute limit with it all on the line in qualifying. So this is just a good opportunity for Kirkwood to kind of get through that.
One of the things that I didn't appreciate early on, Will, was how much I could learn by just studying the cockpit controls and when the changes were made on what lap of a stint for what handling condition, or more importantly, to anticipate what handling condition and get in front of it with the tools, as you'll hear a lot on the radio, is staying in front of the balance.
Now, this is something that I'm obviously going to need explaining to me when you talk about getting ahead, when you talk about utilizing the tools, when you talk about things like weight jackers. For those of us who are novices here, who have never done the 500 before, when you talk about tools, what are you talking about specifically within that car?
You look out the window right now, it's sunshine, but off in the distance, what do you see? Clouds.
Clouds.
Right? What's in clouds? Rain. Put your umbrella up before it starts raining. That's the best way I can explain it. Don't react to the condition, anticipate it. And the reason for that is in Indianapolis 500 racing, once the front balance starts to go away and that front tire starts to slide, it's too late. You can make a change and it kind of corrects things a little bit, but you've already lost the front end of the car.
So are you going on visual on the tire wear? Are you going on feel?
No, it's right here in practice, learning that the balance tends to go a certain direction on your race car, and then by the time you get to the race, it's being able to make the change before the balance gets there. That's what staying in front of your changes is all about.
We hear people talk about looking at that windsock, looking at wind speed, looking at wind direction. How critical is that on a lap?
Massively critical, and that's the hardest thing for us to show you in the car. Is it's really hard to show the rate of steering input entering the corner to anticipate a crosswind or a tailwind in any direction. So it's so subtle, but that's where your hands and feet are so valuable with the wind, is the rate at which you pitch and roll the car.
Guys, I got to be honest. I've tuned out the conversation you were just having because I was so fixated. No offense.
Thanks very much.
I said no offense.
Yeah.
I was so fixated on what we were seeing on the screen here. Josef Newgarden doing one of those mock sims. And, you know, the pace was what the pace was, 2:18.9 on that last lap. He had a little bit of help up in front. But what was fascinating to me was watching those inputs that you were talking about, those adjustments he was making. He was doing the fast jacking, which we've seen has become commonplace. That's adjusting the weight jacker on each straightaway. But I saw him charging and deploying his hybrid on every single lap. I love seeing a little pack already out this early in the day. I mean, normally they kind of save this type of running for happy hour, 4:30-ish onwards, as we see Rasmussen falling back in line there, trying to get behind his Colton Hurd, I believe, or his teammate Rossi.
Yeah, it's interesting to see those two ECR cars going around together again. James, I know you were impressed particularly with Alexander Rossi's run yesterday.
Yeah, look, he looked strong in single car pace, you know, solid top 10 single car pace, looked good in traffic. He was making moves when he wanted to. again, it's never the full competition level in practice, but I thought this guy drove very well. The car looks solid, and so far set up for a strong month.
Coming up on Scott Dixon, who left him quite a bit of clean air to the low side as Rossi goes by easily. I'm sure Rossi probably would have preferred a few more laps with Dixon staying after it so he could work on his race balance.
I love when you go to those onboards during these kinds of runs, because you can audibly hear the engine note change when they pull out of the draft. With the big downforce levels you run in race trim, it's like hitting a brick wall. You hear the engine note start to decrease almost immediately. Your speed is slowing down.
Quite a bit more feedback coming through the steering wheel for Alexander Rossi versus what we might have seen earlier maybe on the Penske car. Could also be used tires, things starting to slide around a little bit, but to me it looks like quite a bit coming back through the steering column and the steering wheel for Rossi to deal with.
Driver's eye view on board with Josef Newgarden. Very cool. Hopefully we'll be able to see him utilizing the hybrid.
James, this looks like another qual sim with that left thumb working the fast jacker. I think it says WJ, weight jacker indeed. So he'll probably grab it at the exit of turn 2 as soon as he feels confident enough to get his thumb up on there. Let's see. Boom.
Boom.
So again, that's dropping the right rear corner of the car ever so slightly just to get the rear wing out of the air, maybe a little bit more top speed, then you release it. That was fairly early on the release, to be fair, for it to pop back up.
By the way, big props to the driver's eye. I mean, this is the most realistic view I've ever seen on board at Indianapolis. It is crystal clear and exactly what it looks like as a driver. Great job, everyone, on that. That is awesome.
Very different strategy this time. No hybrid use so far on this run.
And now he does.
And there he goes. He trains it between 1 and 2. Let's see if his right hand goes down.
Oh, I forgot. I think he was a little late on the jacker that lap.
Yeah, now it's coming back up again.
See him charging it. Yeah, he puts his hand back on the wheel. So again, so much to the lights we're referring to are these ones here and here. There he goes. He drains it again in the short chute at the north end of the racetrack. So again, a slightly different strategy than what we saw on the first one. And this is what we're going to see. These drivers have to go through all these different iterations, and the engineers then have to pick apart the data to figure out exactly what's happening.
At this point, the engineers are like, why did we agree to the driver's eye camera?
Some of them didn't for this reason.
Well, it's fascinating when you see Kirkwood and the Andretti guys saying, use it on the front straight, use it over the bricks. And these guys using it on the short chutes, whether it's top or bottom of the course.
So let's take a look right now. Newgarden. Where is he on the charts?
He
somewhere in the 20s.
It looks like it's cycling.
Through, yeah, Newgarden 26th right now. His last speed was at 2:19.5. He's got a relatively clear piece of racetrack in front of him.
Again, I would argue that this is all about process and data gathering and really not about trimming out. It's just about studying the data. Maybe they're doing something slightly different with the settings versus his earlier run, and then they'll compare. So it's a pretty good read for them. Lifting a bit in turn 1, turn 2. Running on his own, it doesn't look like a qual sim necessarily. Generally would like to see him wide open out of the pits on his first flying lap if he's in a race downforce situation. Looking at minimum speeds, it would suggest they've got a fair bit of wing in it.
Maximum speed will tell you that's got a fair bit of wing in it. Not very quick, 218, and still having to crack the throttle a little bit. At this point, though, we have no idea what tire life Graham's on. They could be working on something for end of stint.
And to be fair, if you throw a change at the race car, I would always give it a little lift, at least on the first time lap, at minimum one end of the racetrack, just to make sure I get a feel with what I'm dealing with. But now we're full 2 laps in, and it looks like hard work right now, James.
Yeah, and big lift there as well.
Not good.
It's not comfortable feeling, that's for sure.
An interesting use of the hybrid. Not a lot of regen on any of the laps, suggesting that this is a quali trial.
No.
It's a weird gear pattern for qualifying as well.
way down in the revs now. He must be coming in. I don't think he'll like whatever settings he's on. Have a hard time thinking he'll be happy with it.
He's still got his foot in it.
Oh.
Very bizarre. Last lap across the line was only a 2:14.9. Big lift.
Boy.
Let's pull that in, bud.
Wow.
I'm getting nervous watching this. I'm uncomfortable sitting in my office chair up in the booth here in the Pagoda. Can only imagine what it feels like. See Graham on the radio talking with his hands at 215 miles an hour. Let's have that chat when you come in, pal. Let's bring it in. We'll plug in. We don't have to have it right now. You got some things, should have some things on your hands, you know. You see in the map there, the 3 Penske cars all out on track together, trying to get a little running. A few other cars sprinkled in there. Grayhall, Larson.
Great place for Kyle Larson to be sitting right now. Just off the tail of Josef Newgarden, and Newgarden in traffic, just to get a chance to study the two-time winner. Larson doesn't seem nearly as comfortable. For me, this is the strongest car right now. Josef Newgarden just appears to be on another level of comfort in traffic, comfort making passes, kind of moving from strength to strength with each lap right now.
Does the overall pace matter at this moment, or is that just a headline time? It's more just about comfort.
He'll want to get a read on what his pace is in clean air once he gets to the front, but it's all about working through traffic, and Newgarden just he just looks the best. Look at the hands too, smooth. The steering doesn't give a lot of kickback. Everything working really well for the Shell team.
You were kind of making those comments about Alex Rossi as we just saw him take his right hand off, make an adjustment to the front bar on that number 2 machine. But, you know, on Rossi's car, we saw a lot more kickback through the steering wheel, the little bumps seeming to transfer through the steering into the wheel. You see the deployment of the hybrid there for Josef as he uses that to get around Jack Harvey.
Think of the group into the cars that we saw just 4 laps ago. Newgarden now just blasted through everybody.
And it just gives you a little bit more confidence as a driver. You see a nice train of cars here. Here's a replay. Christian Rasmussen there going around Kyle Larson.
I think it's Kyle Larson intentionally lifting to go to the back of the pack. That's good coaching from his spotter and his timing stand as well.
Yeah, you hear that lift of the throttle. They're probably saying, hey, look, the number 2 is the best car out there. Let's get in line with him, try to learn off the 2-time and defending race winner here.
Still see a little tear-off flap. It's gonna bug me until it's gone. But hey, you can take a guy away from the dirt track, but can't take the dirt out of the dirt track racer. I mean, the dirt guys, they need those tear-offs.
What's he learning when he's out there right now? Is it line? Is it where to push? Is it how to pass? What is all of the above?
and more, right? It's so many things. Now he's got the hybrid. He didn't have to deal with that last year. So he's got to be thinking to himself, are you kidding me? I come back, I think I've got this figured out, and you throw the biggest single powertrain change to an Indy car since probably the pop-off valve, you know, blowing into your helmet.
But when he's following a Newgarden or a someone else out there, obviously he's learning how to use the hybrid, and he's getting himself reaccustomed with the car as Jack now goes and does exactly the same thing. How much are you learning in the cockpit when you're watching another car?
Timing. That's what he's learning. He's learning timing of when to roll into the throttle, when to make the adjustments in the cockpit, when to turn into the corner. It's really learning the timing. That's probably the single biggest thing as Larson peels off of turn 2. Looks like he'll be coming in, and once again, didn't we just see Newgarden do this?
Well, he caught the end of that train that Rasmussen was caboosing, if you will. They were probably 10-15 car lengths ahead of the pack that Josef drove through. He's now got around him. He's got 2 cars in front of him, Kiffin Simpson and it's Elio Castroneves. So Kiffin cracks the throttle, gives up that spot, but Josef just absolutely on the gearbox of everyone around him, and able to just drive around and through them. That is a very competitive looking machine right now.
You have championship leader big picture thinker, Palou, but never won at Indy on an oval. How does Palou drive that last lap? How aggressive will he be?
That big picture mentality goes out the window. The big picture is his face on the Borg-Warner Trophy.
But it never has for him. In fact, he's the only IndyCar champion in history who's never won on an oval. In fact, he's a 3-time champion that's never won on an oval. I don't know if I agree with you on that last lap with Palou.
I think that he has 3 championships in the bag. He has an almost 2 full race weekend lead going into the 500.
Oh, he goes all or nothing
this year. It is absolutely. You want to talk about Chet as a record?
I agree. He should. I just don't know that he will.
Oh, he will.
He will. It's just can he outdo Josef Newgarden in the same scenario?
I feel like we might have a chance to see it. The way things are framing up right now, it feels like that could be coming.
Well, with Elio sitting third, just waiting, waiting.
And Pato battling Elio to see who gets to pick up the pieces if it all goes south.
Come on.
Guys, we got some great storylines.
We got reason to get excited.
I'm ready for race day.
Let's go.
Fast forward this thing.
Let's go. Less than 3 hours left of practice. What can this man do? Alex Palou. He's looked purposeful and pretty great so far over this day and a half of action that we've already had out here. It doesn't appear to have any issues, any worries at all. James, you were saying that he looked phenomenal during the open test, and that appears to have carried through into yesterday and today.
There was a confidence yesterday that I found fascinating. They weren't as eager to run, or maybe not as urgent a need to run. They felt like they could take their time. They spent a little more time back in the garage. Their lap count wasn't as high as a lot of the other cars, but I think that comes off the back of a very, very strong test here. Single lap pace, they look strong. In race conditions, they look strong. Fast forward to race week, this is when it matters. The open test is the open test. Alex even said that when we interviewed him yesterday during the rain delay. It doesn't really matter what you did in the April test. And looking at it now, do I think he looks as confident in traffic as Josef Newgarden? I do not. So
I agree.
I think that the team is, quietly confident all the time because it's Chip Ganassi Racing and their track record speaks for itself. But even just coming off the back of this string of 4 cars, he's 10 car lengths back. Josef, by this point, had caught up to and driven through half that train of cars. So, again, you don't know tires. We're going to throw all the same caveats out there, all the same asterisks beside it. But to me, that car does not look quite as comfortable in traffic as what we've seen from the 2.
Really interesting thing that starts to happen right around now is as everybody lays down laps, you think about the cars at the sharp end of practice, like Scott Dixon. But if you're a small team, Dale Coyne Racing with Jacob Abel, you're Prema, there's going to be 5, 6, 7 cars and conversations happening in Gasoline Alley where it's like, hey, we might have a problem here. We don't have pure speed down the straight line like we expected. We heard that maybe from Marco Andretti already. This is where you start to think about, hey, maybe we should start doing some more qual sims because we do not want to be bumped from this race, and we do not want to be in the slowest 4 cars after the first run on Saturday. It's not too early for that to start sort of like a cancer forming among some of the slower cars out right now.
You talk about qual sims, talk about no toes. The top 3 at the moment are all Andretti cars. It's the 27 of Kirkwood, it's the 26 of Herta, it's the 98 of Andretti. Who are the next 2 cars on your no toe? 4th and 5th? It's Schwartzman and Eiler. After no running yesterday.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the gap is still quite. I look at the no-toes today compared to yesterday. I think a lot more drivers were trying to get a better handle on the outright pace of the car yesterday. Today it's been more about group running because you look at that gap. Callum down there 5th at a 2:19.7 compared to a 2:22.7. If you think 3 miles an hour is going to cover 5 cars come qualifying, you're absolutely dreaming. Welcome to the Indy 500. So for me, I'm not looking too much into that. But you're right, Townsend. Yesterday, if your car was a bit slow, you could think, okay, maybe we missed something. Let's pull it apart overnight. Let's massage it. Let's work on it. If you go back out and that speed hasn't magically appeared overnight, now you're in panic mode because there's not much you can do between now and Saturday to really find 2 miles an hour if that's what you're missing.
But you better start working on it, and you better not be thinking, well, we should be okay, let's focus on race running. You got to be honest with yourself. If you need to find half a mile an hour, start now. There's no sense working on race setup if you're not in the race. So
we have a yellow flag and a caution, and you'll see the slippery flag, the yellow and red one as well. We believe we have drops of rain at some point on the circuit. Don't tell us Bob Potcross was right all along. I think his timing was pretty much perfect on that hinge.
Yeah, he was pretty close, wasn't he? Said it was coming, building off to the west, and not what you want to see. However, if it's just sort of a passing thing, we could be out there again soon as we see a replay of the helmet hose right here. Santino Ferrucci having come dislodged and now flapping around. Tremendous amount of pressure, as you can imagine, is going through that system. There's a small inlet at the side of the aero screen, and now it's come all the way off. And there you go.
Things starting to pick up out on track. Louis Foster's back out there. Will Power. Here comes Newgarden from the back of the field once again.
As we ride on board with Pato O'Ward, who has spoken, you know, with heart and soul and eloquence over these past few days and weeks and months, in fact, leading up to this race, about what happened last year, about losing out with 2 corners to go, how much it broke his heart, really crushed his soul, and how he uses that as motivation, as fuel to come back and get that win.
Well, Palou knows that feeling, and I misspoke. That wasn't Newgarden in the yellow car. That was the DHL car of Alex Palou, who's trying to do Newgarden things and start at the back of the pack and fire through the draft, and he's doing it with authority. Goes quick now by 2 miles an hour.
Huge.
That is a well-timed lap.
And that's the fastest we've seen so far this week. Goes half a mile an hour faster than Will Power managed at this time yesterday.
We were being mildly critical of the balance of that car, how it looked in traffic before the rain breakdowns, and it feels like he's maybe found his groove, found his mojo a little bit here, as to be able to keep your foot stuck in it in that kind of a draft. That means you're comfortable with the balance of that race car. And it's funny, you guys talk about the loss being the motivator. We saw Scott Dixon say the same thing to Hollywood Harvey in that interview we saw a little while ago. It's not the feeling of winning almost again. It's not feeling the feeling of loss again.
Yeah.
That motivates these drivers as much as anything.
This will be fun to watch here as Will Power in the Verizon car returns the favor to Palou. I mean, guys, Penske Ganassi.
I kind of feel like that's
pretty familiar.
I feel like that's a view we need to be getting used to over the next week and a half.
Yeah.
Those 2 guys duking it out.
Walking around the garage area and talking to a few of the teams that we haven't necessarily celebrated yet for performance. It's because they're scratching their heads right now. They're struggling a bit with the extra mass of the hybrid hanging off the back of the car. And when you watch what's going on right now with these 2, Power and Palou, it sort of adds to the pain a little bit, because you're like, wait a second, what's going on? You know, they have the spy cameras, they know the wheelbases that these guys are running. They can get a reasonable idea maybe of cambers, wing settings, gurney flaps on those wings. But when you feel like you're missing something pretty big, it sort of adds to the frustration of what you're feeling behind the cockpit.
Riding on boards with Scott McLaughlin in the yellow submarine.
Knows how to go fast around this place, over a 4-lap qualifying run. Still looking to better his best result here at the Speedway. Right now, best finish was last year, P6, having started on pole. As we mentioned earlier, has enlisted the expertise of Simon Pagenaud, the 2019 Indy 500 champion.
Look at the rate at which McLaughlin is closing on this group. Connor Daly up ahead. Let's take a look at, it'd be really fun to just stay on board here. He's got about maybe 10 laps on these tires, 12 laps, and what's it like as he gets to traffic. Big throttle lift there, but gets back to the power so comfortably and definitively.
And manages to hold it flat through turn 4.
Watch it suck up, though.
The hybrid deployment, he realizes the timing's not there. So he's already backed out of it very early. Because, again, now he's trying to set up turn 2. The car in front of him is backing off a little bit. That's Connor. That's going to throw his timing off a little bit. That's what makes this so complicated. It's a very dynamic, kind of moving, living thing, a pack of race cars.
Connor's got a pretty good tar, too. I'm just watching how it's handling up ahead. You know, during the break, guys, I walked down to the tech garage and had a close look at Scott McLaughlin's car. Yeah, great. And then looking at the inboard gurneys, you know, we talk about gurneys on the back, but if you look closely, there are those 3 gurney flaps on the front wing main plane, and he's running 2 on the left side and just 1 on the outside. And we talked about some of the flex, but that's something else to watch for, is how they trim. Why would you have 2 on one side versus 1 on the other? It's to get that left-hand side lower clean air if you can. As he's running behind Connor Daly, Connor was right down to the apron curb, didn't leave much opportunity for McLaughlin to get some clean air. But if anybody runs a little bit higher, like they tend to do sometimes in traffic, that second gurney flap on the front wing main plane on the left side allows that front wing to work a little bit better in traffic.
And you may yellow's out for a little bit of weather here at the track. It's just going to be one of those days, isn't it, guys?
It is, and that's what you get here in Indianapolis in May. The weather can be a bit fickle, and we're seeing that over the last 2 days. But again, this is when it starts to create a sense of urgency in the paddock.
Yeah.
You do feel like you have so much practice time when you first show up here, and with a full uninterrupted week of practice, that's true. But we've already had 2 days interrupted by weather, by poor weather, I should say. As somebody pointed out,
there's always weather
online. There's always weather, but it is suboptimal for driving conditions on an oval.
I'm pretty sure it's the helmet behind me, or it's the head surround. I'm not sure, but I get shoved in the middle of the corner when you turn, and then going down the street shoves my head back.
That's a strange one.
Yeah.
A little disconcerting.
Trying to reach back there on the racetrack. That's not something you want to be having your hands occupied by when you're in the middle of traffic at 200 plus miles an hour. Much easier to at least attempt with an aero screen. Pre that, you push your hands above the opening of the cockpit, it'll be punching yourself in the face.
That's never advisable. Riding back on board with Kirkwood's.
But again, think of how many times he's been in and out of the car so far over the last 2 days. Hasn't had that problem.
Yeah.
Gets back in after this last delay. That's an issue. If that happens at the start of the Indy 500, and you're dealing with a situation where your head is being pushed forward mid-corner, every corner, and pushed back on every straight for 500 miles, I mean, that could ruin your day completely.
Well, his strategist, Brian Herta, knows a little something about that. Once raced at California Speedway, pre-aero screen, 225-mile-an-hour track, had his visor discard and remove itself from the helmet at speed during a race one time.
Wow.
And let me tell you, Fontana had sand all the time, and that ended Brian Herta's race on that day.
I'm not surprised.
Well, I remember Ed Carpenter, and I want to say Kentucky maybe, had one of the bolts of his visor come out, and he drove the last 10 laps, leading the race one-handed as he held the visor and held Dario Franchitti off for the win. Massively impressive.
I've heard of the chin straps loosening and drivers having to hold their helmet on because it was lifting so much on the straights. But
well, I can tell you, pre-aero screen, depending on how big of a windscreen little lip that you would run on your cockpit, if your strap came loose, you could pop your helmet straight off with the lift that would take place with the turbulent air on your helmet in the cockpit. So the aero screens changed a lot of that, but driver comfort paramount. You certainly don't want anything unexpected happening in the cockpit.
Talking about what everyone else is doing, Kevin, you got an update for us on Rasmussen.
He is actually doing a qualifying sim, and Ed Carpenter just did one now. That surprised me. You guys have a better look at the track and what kind of open space he has. It's hard to find open space this time. I believe Alexander Rossi, the third team car, is just doing race running. I did check in with that team, and they were not doing a qualifying sim. But Rasmussen may be finding enough of space in front to see what they can learn to get set for qualifying.
I can tell you, Kevin, he's got about a quarter mile clear ahead of him, just literally one corner's gap between himself and Callum Ilott ahead.
Yeah, he'll be picking up quite a bit of help on the front straightaway as Christian Rasmussen goes across at 221.0, and he'll probably back off as he was catching. This is a strange time to be doing a quali sim, and you know, tire conservation is, you know, something to consider as well. Now, he can, of course, use those tires for more race running, but not an ideal time, I don't think. And I wonder why the urgency. You're talking about one of the teams that historically has been maybe the strongest qualifying team in Indianapolis over the last 10 years, Ed Carpenter Racing. I would think they'd be quietly confident that they can wait Thursday, Friday, unless they're seeing some weather on the horizon that we don't know about. I'll take a look.
Yeah, it seems pretty interesting, just given the fact we know this time of day is when everyone's doing the race running. We have so many cars out on track, and the weather tomorrow looks
like it might rain, like there might be lightning, and Friday an increased chance of rain and lightning. So maybe that is something to think about, Will. The strategic focus starting to ramp up as we get closer to Fast Friday.
Checkered flag is out. Practice day 2 is in the books, and that guy, that man, the championship leader Alex Palou, is fastest. 227.5 is the fastest time we've seen so far this week. Will it be bettered? Of course. When? Possibly tomorrow. So join us, please, won't you, back at the racing capital of the world, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, for day 3 of practice for the Indianapolis 500.